Well, good morning, everyone. I'd first like to acknowledge that I am on the traditional and unceded territories of the Tsawwassen and Musqueam First Nations and other Coast Salish people who have been stewards of this land since time immemorial. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the first ever BC Women in Manufacturing Success Forum. My name is Tracy Spear and I am the co-owner of Humble Manufacturing and chair of our BC CME Women in Manufacturing Working Group. I'd like to say a special thank you to the CME Women in Manufacturing Working Group for making this day happen. We are part of a larger CME Women in Manufacturing group on a national level. However, our goals are the same: to increase diversity and the representation of women in manufacturing. To limit any confusion today, I just wanted to make everyone aware that Women in Manufacturing is synonymous with the acronym WIM, W-I-M. Now, the purpose of today's event is to share and discuss the initiatives to increase diversity and inclusion in BC manufacturing. We also need to look at where we are as an industry today and where we need to be to close the gender gap going forward. Today's session will start with our keynote address by an industry leader, Rhonda Barnett. Then we'll move on to our panel discussion, as well as incorporate some interesting videos and visuals throughout. As you all know, October is Manufacturing Month. What better opportunity than this event to celebrate and bring awareness to our industry? What better time to address issues like the labor and skills shortages? You know, as leaders in this industry, we know that a healthy manufacturing sector must have the people power, and women offer an untapped resource. In Canada, women make up 48% of the workforce. However, only 28% in manufacturing and less than 10% on the shop floor. It is so critical to have a diverse talent pool to generate the best outcomes for our companies and keep Canadian manufacturing competitive on the world stage. Prior to February of 2020, manufacturing's workforce was made up of 29.5% women. It had moved up to 29.5% from a stagnant 28% that it had been sitting at for many years previous. And this was due to the hard work and dedication of many men and women, some of who you will meet today, to move that dial. However, when the pandemic struck, we dropped back down to that 28%, the same figure, as I said, that we had been at for many years previous. But this didn't discourage us. It motivated us. Hence the creation of the We Can Do It campaign to bring 100,000 women to manufacturing in the next 5 years. Yes, I did say 100,000 women to manufacturing in the next 5 years. Now, how are we going to accomplish this? By hosting industry and educational events such as these. You're going to start seeing more of these types of events popping up across the country in the weeks, months, and years to come. You can also visit the CME's website to find out more information on WIM's strategic imperatives, as well as free tools and resources. As an industry, we need to engage, inspire, attract, and retain women. And there's no one better to speak on this topic than today's keynote speaker, Rhonda Barnett. Rhonda is one of the most motivating women I know in manufacturing, and she's the founder of the CME Women in Manufacturing Initiative. Now, what better way to kick off our first event here in BC than by having Rhonda join us? So for the next 30 minutes, Rhonda's going to inspire you like she's inspired me. So without further ado, Rhonda Barnett.
Thank you for that warm introduction, Tracy. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you, Tracy. And so thank you, Tracy and Andrew and the board out in BC, the divisional board and the staff of CME BC division for launching this and for inviting me to help you kick this off. It's a real pleasure to join you. it's kind of neat to be in this virtual world. I was actually in Italy this morning presenting, and I'm back to Italy again tomorrow. That could never happen, prior to the pandemic. I never would have even considered doing that. But this is Manufacturing Month, and it's being recognized around the world. So I'm at the World Manufacturing Forum today and tomorrow, and I'm so pleased to join you in BC today. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to take you through in a few minutes, but I think Tracy set the stage nicely, and I'll review a little bit of that as I go along. I'm hoping today, I was thinking today we might be joined by our CEO, Dennis Darby, and a brand new director to CME, a national director, Jamie Kramer, who is actually brand new in the role this week to lead equity, diversity, and inclusion for CME. So if you two are out there, a big shout out. I know Jamie's in her onboarding right now, so I'm looking forward to working with her. So things are really ramping up at CME on this file, and it's going to be fully resourced so that we can do the great work that needs to be done. So I've been working in manufacturing and industry for 30 years now. And, I was born and raised in Peterborough, Ontario, which is just outside of GTA. It's a historical, traditional manufacturing town. I think when I was a kid, it was probably 25% of the jobs were direct manufacturing jobs. It's probably around 15% now. So it's not a surprise that I ended up in manufacturing, but in some ways it's a surprise because, manufacturing, they were the jobs that families, sought after and fought for because they were the good paying jobs that really helped elevate people and families and communities into the middle class. And I was raised in a working class family. My parents didn't have post-secondary education. They didn't work in manufacturing. I was first to go to university. I had a lot of aunts and uncles that worked in manufacturing, so I understood it. I knew about it. And, I was able to penetrate that market when I graduated. A little bit sideways. I started in the accounting department. I didn't really know how to penetrate it. And eventually, through sponsorship of men around me, I ended up really reaching the top heights of the sector in Canada and the world. And, so it's really important for me to be able to share my story to hopefully inspire others on that trajectory that, manufacturing really does elevate people into the middle class and even upper middle class. That's historically what it's done, and it continues to do that. And, build strong communities. And these are really great jobs, and they've really changed a lot. And there are not enough women there. And so I'm here today, hopefully, to educate and inspire you in ways that you could think about in your own organizations, if you're with government, wherever you're coming from, your companies, your social circles, the kinds of things that you can start to do, the conversations that you can have to start to make a difference. So I'm going to start my PowerPoint, but rather than interrupt it, I've asked Andrew if he'll run a little video that he found for me of women working in the sector in BC, because in the beginning, I'm going to talk about the history of women in manufacturing in Canada, and I wanted to have a nice British Columbia element to this. So he's going to roll a short video, and then I'm going to start my presentation.
Through a scrubbing machine they go, and on to the final cleaning table. Here the salmon are inspected, not once, but twice. The two final inspectors allowing only perfect work to pass on into the plant. After passing through the slicing machine, the salmon steaks arrive at a table. Here, operators feed the slices into a machine which fills the cans. The filled cans pass on their way and come under the scrutiny of inspectors who see to it that they are properly packed. Automatic weighing machines check every can and reject any which may be underweight. In quick succession, the cans pass through the salting machine, have lids applied, and are vacuum packed. The cans are put in steam retorts for the cooking process. There they stay for the prescribed time and are then removed to make room for more. The many retorts are constantly in use. The British Columbia Packers Limited Imperial Cannery is located on the Fraser River a few miles from Vancouver. A long-established plant, it is operated on extremely modern lines. There is a tea room for workers in addition to the regular dining hall. The tea room is put to good use during the afternoon rest period. Because of the seasonal nature of the business, living accommodation must be provided for many of the workers. The provision of housing where employees can live in pleasant and healthful surroundings has proven worthwhile. Further precautions as to health and first aid are taken care of by the nurse on duty at all times. Of great interest to most people are the labeling machines. Cans are labeled automatically in a fraction of the time necessary to do the job by hand. And now, here is the king of seafoods in a form you will instantly recognize. Preserved within these containers are the rich, succulent oils and the inimitable flavor for which the salmon species are justly famous.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to just share my screen now. And okay, so today I want to talk about creating change for women in manufacturing, because that's kind of where I'm at in this work. And so we saw the old manufacturing in British Columbia and women's role there. And I've got a slide here, which, you know, I'm trying to show the old to the new and get people thinking about that new image of manufacturing and a new view of how women participate. So last week it was International Day of the Girl, and I was putting on a summit, and we were talking about getting more girls in STEM. And so a big focus of that work was that jobs don't have genders, but business culture perpetuates gender stereotypes. So if we can start to think about that, I think we can start to see women doing anything in our sector. And I think certainly in that video you saw jobs did have genders. The women were doing specific jobs and the men were doing specific jobs, and they didn't really cross over. But we're working to change that perception. So let's see if I can change my slide here. There we go. Okay, so let me just set the stage with CME. So I think it was around 2017 that we did our Women in Manufacturing survey, and then CME does these surveys, I think, every 1 or 2 years around, you know, what are the biggest issues for manufacturers. So this is the results of the 2020 survey. And I know there's a survey underway right now, but basically year over year, the biggest issue for manufacturers across the country is access to talent. There's a skill shortage in Canada. And so, you know, I've been working nationally at this issue, thinking about what do we do. And so we recognize women are, you know, this massive source of untapped talent. And if we could break down systemic barriers for them, that we could invite them in and they could be extremely successful and help us compete and grow. So that's really the practicality of the movement. We need women. We need the whole population if our sector's going to compete and grow. And so that's how Women in Manufacturing came about. Let's talk in terms of the CME initiative. Let's talk about the history. We've seen the BC, you know, back in the day video, but manufacturing has been around for a very long time in Canada. And certainly I live in what used to be called Upper Canada. So in the 1700s, we had the textile industry in Quebec, and women played a big role there. And late 1800s, the light manufacturing, which I would classify the video of canning. So things like textiles, food, munitions, that was light manufacturing, probably tobacco. Women were 50% of the labor force of what we'd call light manufacturing. In the early 1900s, women made up 13% of total paid labor force in Canada. So that's not very much of the paid labor force in Canada. And then 1909, the Women's Labor League was formed. So this is kind of the whole rollout in Canada of equality for women and women engaging with the economy. Then we had some world wars. That's when things really shifted for women. And we see Rosie the Riveter here, the icon of bringing women into the factories as men went to war. So in World War I, we employed women on scale. There were as many now, there are 570,000 women working in industry at the start of the war. And that's how many we have now. But of course, domestic manufacturing was bigger then. World War II, slightly less, but still a lot of women working in manufacturing, making food and munitions and the things that we needed for the war. So that's our history. So in 1967, there was a Royal Commission on the Status of Women, and we hear a lot about that. We've gone through kind of a 50th anniversary of the results of that and the initiatives of the things that they were going to change. So we decided then that we would change all of these things. We'd make progress for women. We would, have equality in society and the economy for women, but we're not there yet. So in 1975, it's not that long ago, it's certainly in my lifetime, women only earned 60 cents to a man's dollar. 1977, there was a Human Rights Act on equal pay, and yet today we're still not at equal pay. In 1978, this one boggles my mind, the Canada Labor Code eliminates pregnancy as a reason for dismissal. And then in 1995, that was kind of the height of manufacturing before we saw a bit of decline. Women are 50% of the entire labor force, but still only 27% of manufacturing, and that's remained stagnant to today. So in 2017, we started the We Can Do It campaign. Our low or high watermark at that point, whatever you want to call it, was around just under 500,000 workers. And so we started the We Can Do It campaign to add 100,000 women to the sector. We've gone through a bunch of programming. I'll get to that in a few minutes. And those resources are on our website, womeninmanufacturing.ca, but we were determined to move the dial for women's participation in our labor force. We added about 42,000 jobs just before COVID. We hit this high watermark that we were so excited about, only to be devastated a month later with the loss of 115,000 jobs due to COVID. Women bore the brunt of the job losses in our sector. More of it. We've worked really hard in the sector to be promoting inclusive recovery, and most women have earned their jobs back in the sector. The sector is really thriving again, and we have labor shortages again. Not all women can re-engage with the sector because of still childcare issues, elder care issues, etc. And we are sitting right now with a delta of just under 20,000 women from our high water point. So, it's time to double down and restart that work. So we're making another initiative to add 100,000 now for the next 5 years. Now we've got a director coming on board, and we're very excited to be relaunching this success project. So that's kind of the brief history. Progress is stalled. So, why does that matter? Well, I think this needs to change because, our industry thrives and survives on innovation, and we need to engage the full population if we're going to grow and compete, and if we're going to be able to innovate and create the kind of sustainable products that the world needs, and I think women are 50% of consumers in Canada, and we don't want to just be passive users. We need to be at the table helping to make better products that are more sustainable. And I think that's a theme that resonates with women all over Canada. So, if you have one thing to go out and say to young people in your community, talk to them about that. Like, don't you want to influence the products of the future? Because that's really what manufacturing does. And we need more women at the table in this innovation process. So I spend most of my time now really trying to empower other women and have other champions, men and women, carry the torch to be empowering women in organizations, because we have a lot of work to do. So we kind of know the problem. So why would women want to join us? What's the value proposition for them? Well, there's power in diversity. These are the jobs of the future. They're high tech. You have economic empowerment in our sector. We pay above average wages, and you get to be a change maker. You get to make important things better. So these, I think, are the value propositions of why women should consider our sector. But there's many obstacles. So we at CME, we ran a national survey a few years ago to take a look, at the sector across the country. I think we surveyed 850 women across the country that were working in the sector to look at what the challenges are specific to Canada. And they weren't that different from other places in the world, but basically they fall into these kinds of buckets. So there's a glass ceiling. And there's a broken rung in management up to that glass ceiling. So, only 2% of CEOs in technology companies are women. So 98% of them are men. And so that's a glass ceiling, and only about 15 to 20% of middle and senior managers are women, and the rest are men. So that's the broken rung. So we're not going to get to be a CEO if we can't climb the ladder. So these are important things to consider as you're elevating women in your organization. We have the demands of unpaid care work. We saw that play out in a big time in the pandemic. So it's interesting that a very bright light shone on that for us. There's a lack of visible role models in male-dominated industries, and our sector is no different. So CME and myself, we do a lot of work to make sure that we are putting role models out and telling the stories of successful women. So if you can see me, you can be me. That's my motto. We still have issues with business culture, although jobs don't have gender. Business cultures perpetuate gender stereotypes. So we have to individually, as companies and organizations, think about that and think about our business culture and make improvements on that. And patriarchal structures, that's a word. When I used to say that, I think people would squirm in their seats. But really what patriarchy is it's the balance of power sits with men. So if 98% of the CEOs in our sector are men, the balance of power sits with men. So, if we're going to shift that, we have to help get more women there and more women's perspectives to help shift that paradigm. And then unconscious bias is something we bump up onto all the time. And that's why we have a toolkit to help, bring awareness to unconscious bias and some tools of how to improve upon that. And around the world, we see one of the biggest reasons for women not penetrating the sector is a lack of self-confidence. They don't see how they could be successful. That, you have to be strong or big, or, you need something that I don't have to be there. And so we need to empower more women. So these are the obstacles that we think about when we go to set up the work at CME. So as I said, we did a survey across the country, and we've sort of put all of the work into these 5 pillars here, which I think Tracy talked about very nicely. And I think you're going to hear more about this later, and kind of the support and the tools that CME has and is developing, and the peer councils in each province, how you can come and take parts of these pillars and do work in your community. Because really, all of these 5 pillars, these are grassroots effort. We need people on the ground like you to take a hold of these and to commit to doing some work in your own community, in your own province, to make a difference, whether that be, being a mentor or opening your door to young people to see your factory, sponsoring people through an organization, bringing awareness, all these things. So these are our 5 pillars, and you can find all of this work on womeninmanufacturing.ca is our website. It takes you to all the CME resources. And then we've built, a ton of programming and work off of these 5 pillars, which I think are going to be launched out in BC, that you'll have your own working group on these pillars. So basically the overview of CME's initiative we have this national working group, which I have been co-chairing. It's luckily it's moving fast across the country, and we have people like Tracy stepping up to do the work provincially, and that's where the work is going to happen. We've launched the website and the portal, as I said, womeninmanufacturing.ca. It has all the resources there, all the stories. It's a one-stop shop for all of those things. Our We Can Do It campaign, we started it a couple of years ago to add 100,000 net new women to the sector in 5 years. We'd added 42,000. We've dropped 18 now, but we're resetting the bar. We're starting again. We're going to add 100,000 as we rebuild, as we build back better in Canada. We're going to do that in our sector, and we're going to add 100,000 women to this sector in 5 years. And we believe we can do this with the support of federal programs like the National Child Care Strategy, because Dennis and I had the opportunity to pen a letter to the Prime Minister prior to the election on this. And we believe, with, the right formula, the right tools for our sector, that this program alone could help us add 50,000 women, net new women, to the sector. Because when we have our chief economist, who I think is speaking to you tomorrow, when he breaks down the data, women in Canada with a child in their home under 6 years old, that's the smallest segment of our working population in Canada. So what if we could, have access to better childcare that was near our facilities, that supported the production timeframes that we are under, and it was affordable, and we could bring more women in that category that need and want to work. We could bring them back to our sector to work and have a high-paying job. So 100,000 women. We have the diversity toolkit free on the website. Please grab hold of it, share it, use it. We have created recently mentorship guidelines. Lots of companies and organizations want to run mentorship programs. We have mentorship guidelines on how to do that. Her stories are featured on the website, on social media. There's been lots of stories, and we hope you'll, as a division, get involved in that and have stories of your own division of women, rocking it and succeeding, and sharing those stories with others to inspire other people. And then hosting the events like today. We've hosted so many events, and I'm proud to say these are some of the best attended events, I think, in CME. Certainly our annual forum was a giant this year, but this past year we held National Women in Manufacturing Week. We claimed the whole week around International Women's Day, and I hope we're going to do that again next year. We have open doors events across the country to open our plants to young girls and boys, but we have specific funding for young girls to come in, and we have leadership training through our Training Institute, and we're going to be launching even more leadership training through the Training Institute specific to women. How do we get more female leaders in the organization? And of course, we have great access to government officials in all levels of government, because CME has a very influential broad reach, and this file gets a lot of attention. So what are the next steps? We've got a lot of work to do, and now we've got a director in place. So that's going to be exciting to help move the dial here. It's hard to be doing all this work from the side of your desk. And for me, I have a full-time job. I run a factory myself. But we're again working on that access to childcare that accommodates our working environment. So that's unique to us, and we need to raise awareness to that, both provincially and federally. And we're always working on improving curriculum reform to make sure that students are understanding what we do. They, things like trades in high schools, they started to disappear. We have to make sure that's there. We have to think about things like digital factories and robotics, and making sure all of that's in the curriculum. Again, we're going to continue showcasing what manufacturing looks like to young people, to make sure that they're not like, oh, that's not for me. That's like old, dead, dying. We have to show young people that our sector's vibrant, and these are well-paid technical jobs, and it's exciting and innovative. And so CME is playing a big part there. the peer council networks across the country. That's what you're doing here today. You're developing your own peer councils in British Columbia. It's important that not everything's national, because our country, we're different from coast to coast, and the issues you may have in British Columbia may be different than the ones I have in Ontario, but you have that big broad network nationally, and you can have your conversations as well divisionally. And again, as I said, the leadership training out of the Training Institute, and I look forward to seeing that unfold. So we hope that you'll all join in the work that we do, that you'll take a pledge, go online, and there's a button you can pledge. We want so many companies, every company in Canada needs to pledge. It doesn't cost you anything. Just pledge that diversity matters to your organization, to you, that we can do it. It costs nothing but your time to just go and take the pledge. And then we ask that you work with us to influence the next generation of women in manufacturing, and join us and make your voice heard. We need lots of people around the table. Access the training, network with people like you are today, participate in these events as frequently as you can. And we hope that you'll share your success stories with us so we can broadcast them through our Her Story network, because it's really important. I think those stories resonate across the country. My motto through this whole initiative has been, if you can see me, you can be me. I mean, really, I didn't get to spend a lot of time on my story, but I came from a working class poor family that was uneducated, and I'm working at the heights of industry now, and there's nothing magical or special. I did a lot of hard work and kept connecting the dots, and had great sponsors, frankly, around me to help me reach the next step. So I think if you can see me and hear my story, you can be me. And I hope that you'll access these tools and sponsors and mentors so you can reach your full potential, and that you'll also carry the torch for change, because I can't do this alone. I've tried, it's exhausting. I need change makers across the country to carry this torch. So the motto around Women in Manufacturing is Rosie's motto: we can do it. I believe we will do it. So let's go do it together. So thank you again today for the opportunity to speak with you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Rhonda. What did I say, everyone? She was going to inspire you, and I'm sure she accomplished that goal for sure. There was just a couple things that really resonated with me. And I don't know if you can see the chat, Rhonda, but a comment was made about that the jobs don't have genders. And I think that's going to be maybe what we'll all tweet out after this is done, because I think that's now, what a great line. And it's so, so true, and just so succinctly put there. I also have young women that are in my life, and about influencing products for the future. Again, putting it out there to say to them, you can make change, you can have influence on what we make in the future. I just love that. I do have one question for you before we move on. We have some questions from actually CME BC Women in Manufacturing Working Group individuals. I just have a question. Can you give us a little or elaborate more on this training institute? Where is the training institute? Is it across the country? Is it online?
Yeah, so I'm not the best person to answer that question, as I'm not staff, but the Training Institute has existed within CME in Manitoba for a very long time around lean training, and that's expanded to leadership training and other training, and it's now being shared across the country. And I don't know if there's a staff person on the line that could talk a little more broadly about that.
Yeah, I can very quickly address that, Tracy. We have been working with the Training Institute in Manitoba to bring lean training to British Columbia to supplement the other things we were already doing. Our next lean training session with the Lean Training Institute is November the 1st and 2nd, and then a follow-up session later in the month. If anyone wants to learn more about our lean training session, you can just message me on the side. It's Andrew Wynne Williams, so I'm easy to find alphabetically.
Thanks,
Fantastic.
Andrew.
Yeah, and I'll just say too that we're sort of I know that we're piloting specific training for women, and then that can be rolled out across the country. So I think there has been a pilot on lean training specific for women and for leadership as well. And as those are tweaked, they'll get to roll out across the country.
Fantastic. So everyone listening today and participating, make sure that you take note of that, and be aware when that training comes out, and keep keep your eyes peeled for that. Well, then let's move on to some of our questions here. Our first question comes from Lisa Block. She is the People and Culture Business Partner with Matri. Matri is a leading manufacturer and distributor of interior furnishing products. Lisa, nice to see you this morning. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Glad to be here and glad to have participated as part of the WIM group that put this event on. So definitely an area of interest for ourselves. The question that I have for you, Rhonda, like many manufacturers right now, Matri has a 10% vacancy rate with 50 open roles. What is the best way for an employer to communicate to the available labor market that our jobs are jobs for women too?
Well, that's a good question. And I know from a CME perspective, we have kind of wrestled with this one and having, you know, a third party support. We've had some of them come to our annual national conferences like the People Corporation, et cetera. Like, I think we need some help, honestly, nationally, to have some kind of umbrella. I think a future state would be that we could have some kind of a place where we could be talking about manufacturing jobs nationally, and it could be specific to division. So I know that's something that has been talked about, but you know, I think CME plays a role in just maybe highlighting. You know, I think if you take the pledge, diversity matters, and you start to use some of the language that we're using and get the, you know, that's kind of support of CME, that we're part of this working group, we're part, you know, we understand the diversity tool, like, please understand that we have, this company is committed, we have the tools, we have the policies, and, you know, this is a friendly place for women. I think there's a lot of work to be done here for sure. And, you know, as we have resources at CME, again, I don't commit those resources, Dennis does. So, you know, these are the kinds of things that I think we need to dig in to help our members attract the talent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. Our next question is from Carly Fryer. Carly, again, is one of our Women Manufacturing Working Group individuals. She is the Manager of Global Logistics at Stem Cell Technologies. Good morning, Carly.
Hello, good morning. Rhonda, thank you so much for the inspiring piece this morning. And watching that video about the salmon canning, I realized my family was involved in manufacturing and might have worked in that facility. So a little bit of a throwback. I need to do some research on that and my own family's history in manufacturing. My question is around mentorship, actually, and there's a lot of programs for women to mentor other women, but I'm curious how we can encourage and provide support to women to be viewed as mentors for men in the workforce and to encourage change on that side as well.
That's a really interesting conversation to have. You know, I think if you look at the toolkit, look at the diversity toolkit, we actually have a leader guidebook for men. So I think if you took what we're talking about in mentorship and took those two pieces, we have two pieces, we haven't put them together. We've talked about helping men be sponsors, but not specifically mentors. We do have a mentorship program guideline. It's not gendered, so it could be for a man or woman to be a mentor. So I would direct you to the website to look at those two pieces. And I mean, that's a really good point that we can maybe really make a deeper connection there. But we talk a lot about, you know, trying to get women female mentors whenever possible, and but I've had lots of male mentors and sponsors, but just trying to understand the difference. You know, a sponsor is helping you get in front of the next opportunity and make sure you're seen for, you know, what you can contribute. And a mentor is really working on all the issues. And, you know, sometimes it's hard for a man to work with a woman on the issues she's facing if he hasn't faced them himself. That's maybe part of the mentorship, you know, that it's lived experiences versus learned experiences. So yeah, I think more work needs to be done to fully understand that, but it is very important. I think just helping men be aware of, you know, on the journey of mentorship, what are the things that you talk about, and you know, what are the obstacles that senior women like me have faced that they can share with the women working up through the ranks.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks, Carly. We have time for one last question, and it is from, again, another WIM member, and it is Wendy Willis. She is the factory manager at Lush Fresh Handmade Cosmetics. Good morning, Wendy. Please ask your question or have a chance to chat with Rhonda.
Morning. Yes, hi, Rhonda. I certainly, one thing that's very close to our hearts at Lush is around belonging, inclusion, and diversity. And certainly, especially over the last few years as we've expanded our focus and really committed as an organization. You mentioned Jamie Kramer up front, and then obviously around a focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion. How have the last couple of years maybe affected the lens of CME around inclusion, especially for us here locally? I think we talk a lot around people of color, immigration, our LGBTQ plus community, et cetera. Have you started to expand the lens around those groups as well?
Yes, absolutely, we have. So I have led chair of Workforce of the Future. So, and women in manufacturing was kind of the signature element of that, but we were looking at, Indigenous Canadians, racialized minorities, and Canadians with disabilities. We were looking at veterans, and there's a lot of small pilots that other companies have done, and we're trying to package that to think about what we could do with it. It's a big parcel of work, but certainly Jamie, her role is Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and part of her job will be to lead women in manufacturing, but I understand her role is that broad. So, as I hope she's listening. She's walking into a lot of work, and I think we're all here to support her. But this is the important work that we need to do as a sector. We can't just have a sector of white men leading the organizations, being the faces of the organizations. White men are very important to our sector, but we need to have a broad, balanced view of our society within our sector. And so I have been championing that. That work sits in the national strategy of CME, that EDI and ESG are critical elements for the success of CME, and they are pillars of the strategy, and that's why Jamie's come on board to help lead that work.
Thank you very much, Wendy and Rhonda. Thank you. We're out of time for questions, and I know that people are probably curious now that if they didn't know you beforehand, how they can kind of stay in touch and how you can all stay in touch with Rhonda. Well, I would highly recommend, as you saw in her slides, you can follow her on social media, and I have been doing it now for probably over a year or two, and it is so neat every day to see what you are working on and what you are accomplishing on behalf of the CME, women in manufacturing, and beyond. So thank you again for participating and being our keynote speaker today. And I know you're a very busy woman, and we appreciate your time. And once again, thank you for participating in BC's first ever Women in Manufacturing Success Forum.
Thanks. It was a privilege. Thank you so much.
Take care, Rhonda.
Bye.
Well, we thought it was probably time, now that you've been inspired by Rhonda, that we take a moment to maybe highlight some of the things that we're doing here in BC, because we make some pretty cool things. So as Canadians, we often will, be a little bit shy to share some of the great successes that we're doing. So we're changing that up today, and we're going to share with you about a 4-minute video with some of the cool things that we're making here in our province of BC.
We design, engineer, manufacture, and assemble our air compressor systems in-house in our facility in Nanaimo, British Columbia, Canada. Investing in our capabilities to manufacture systems in our own facility makes VMAC unique from other air compressor manufacturers, as we are the only manufacturer that offers fully engineered solutions with core components designed and manufactured in-house for the mobile equipment market. While other manufacturers import offshore components not designed for mobile applications, at VMAC, we manufacture mobile-specific components right here in North America, resulting in air compressor systems that are lighter and smaller, but also more powerful, durable, reliable, and customizable. We've partnered with a global network of hundreds of dealers who share our drive to improve the industry with innovative air compressor systems for their customers. When you choose VMAC, you can feel confident that we'll deliver the air compressor and multi-power solutions that you need to work safely, productively, and more profitably.
FPS, the day we came up with the name, we knew we were not just going to do freezing. We wanted to be a food process solutions supplier. We have developed ourselves as a global player to be able to compete at the highest levels.
We differentiate ourselves by providing custom solutions. We strive to develop a long-term partnership with our customers and integrate their ideas and thoughts into the products and work with our team to develop a solution that's specific to their needs.
We chose FPS because they have the most hygienic tunnel on the planet Earth. It's fully stainless steel, seamless construction. The motor's mounted on the outside. The floor is sloped to the outside. It's easier to clean, defrost, and operate, and it's more efficient from a power standpoint.
It is a requirement for the hygienic equipment, which is not been happening, but we set the bar to be so high. The industry didn't even think it's possible.
FPS offers a solution from a handshake all the way till the end of the life cycle of the equipment. We believe that service is paramount, and we take care of our customers regardless of how small or big they are.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. Again, it's just a snapshot of a few of the really cool products that we make here in BC. Now, on to today's panel. Today's panel is an opportunity to highlight individuals and companies who have successfully attracted, retained, supported, and engaged women and increased diversity within their organizations. The panel will be approximately the next 90 minutes or so, and we'll have 15 minutes at the end for our questions. Please submit your questions to the participant named question in the chat, and I'll be able to manage through those, and we will make sure that as many questions get asked as possible. Now, our panel moderator today is Fatima Saw, another one of our Women in Manufacturing BC Success Forum. One of my colleagues that's also on the working group. She's also the Director of Finance from Murray Latta Progressive Machine. And I'm going to hand it over to Fatima to take away the panel.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of CME, I'm very excited to be here today as the moderator for the next 90 minutes as we get to know our extraordinary panel with a wide range of backgrounds. We'll get the chance to hear about their journey into the manufacturing world, how they have successfully attracted and retained women in the workplace, as well as increased diversity within their organization. At the end, we'll have time for a quick Q&A session, as Tracy mentioned. Yes.
I'm just going to stop you there. There's a little bit of feedback on the line. You might need to just turn down your volume slightly.
Okay.
And maybe we can try again.
Okay.
Oh, I think that sounds better already.
That better?
That's much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It wouldn't be a Zoom call without someone not going off of mute or a little technical glitch. Anyway, take it away.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah, so we'll have the Q&A session at the end. You can start thinking of your questions, and we'll ask the audience to type it into the chat box. So first off, my name is Fatima Saw. I'm a part owner and director of finance of Murray Latta Progressive Machine. So I have been in the manufacturing sector for about 30 years. Murray Latta Progressive is a Surrey-based custom machinery manufacturer and distributor, as well as field millwright equipment installation company. Murray Latta has been around since 1918, and we presently have about 150 employees, and we serve the resource and several other diversified industry sectors. So before we dive into the questions, I'd like to give the opportunity to our panel speakers to give us a quick intro about themselves, who they are, and what company they work for right now. So Sarah, we'll start with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Steinke. I'm the HR leader at Garibaldi Glass Industries. Garibaldi is an architectural glass fabricator with a 160,000 square foot facility located in Burnaby, BC. We're known for many award-winning projects, such as the Shangri-La, Nordstrom's downtown, and Anvil Center in New West, just to name a few. I've been in manufacturing industry going on 10 years in various human resources roles. My hope for today is just to share a little bit about why I feel that this is such an amazing industry to have a career in, and for the employers in the audience, some insight into ways you can increase the engagement, attraction, and retention of women in your workforce. Also, just so that you know, I've been playing Beyonce's song, Who Runs the World, Girls, playing in my head the entire presentation. So I hope you can hear it too.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Melanie?
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm inspired already. It's exciting. So I'm Melanie Potyondi, and I am a CPA by trade, so an accountant by trade, and currently am the Chief Financial Officer of the Rimex Group. My job role is that I oversee the accounting and treasury, HR, payroll, IT, and supply chain. I'm also part of our global leadership group, so we do business all over the world. Anywhere there's open pit mining in particular, we're present in. And our group represents our main areas, which is Chile, the US, Canada, Australia, China, and Indonesia. We have, I would say, about 400,000 square feet in Canada and China. And we have currently just under 500 employees worldwide. And I'm happy to be here.
Okay, thank you, Melanie. And Bill, you're next.
Well, I'm Bill Jeffroy. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of Manufacturing for Matrix. I'm feeling very underprepared. I wasn't aware I was supposed to come up with theme music. And I feel, Sarah, you're definitely 2 strides ahead of me in this process. Matrix is a manufacturer of architectural moldings aimed at the residential construction. So you see our products in Lowe's, Home Hardware, Timber Marts across Canada. We have 5 manufacturing plants in Canada, 2 in the US, 30 distribution centers across both Canada and the United States. And I'm also a member of the 10-person leadership team that leads the entire company, which is about 1,300 employees. And I am super excited to be asked to participate today.
Okay, and thank you, Bill. And last but not least, Lynn.
Hello, my name is Lynn Ferrari. Bill, feel free to grab one of those guitars and riff off on any kind of song that you think is going to manufacturally inspire us women. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. In my application to be on the panel, I literally was jumping up and down because while I didn't start in manufacturing, I am from a labor family, a blue collar labor family in the United States, heavily involved in construction, and manufacturing and construction are definitely brother and sister. And throughout my career, I have worked with global and national manufacturing organizations in chemicals, food, and office furniture, where I have been the head of HR and have faced all of the issues that we are talking about here. I am currently, over the last almost year now, I am the Director of People and Change with KPMG. KPMG is one of the top 4 global consultancies on the planet. We focus in tax, audit, and then my work in consultancy. So I work with manufacturing organizations in BC, as well as our partners here who have those global clients. For example, I'm very involved with the Executive Health and Safety Council. I have spoken there. I'm going to be attending their annual event in, I believe, is next week or the week after. So a great deal of passion for what the people, powered by people, and especially the women initiatives. I think one of the things that I offer here is that I do sit across other industries that are similarly going through labor challenges. So we are in manufacturing competing not just with other manufacturers, but with retail and mining and ag. So we have an opportunity to identify the distinguishers here, which we absolutely can. And again, Rhonda, thank you. What an amazing presentation. And I am absolutely going to be advocating that gender jobs do not have a gender. That is mind-blowing to me. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all. So let's hear about your backgrounds and how that's contributed to your journey into manufacturing. Did you find it easy or difficult to get into the manufacturing world? Sarah?
Right, great question. I actually started my career in human resources in high tech, and I eased into manufacturing, working for a company that created both the software and the hardware components for their products. From there, I was kind of sponsored and went into another company in metal fabrication, and they created some amazingly huge pieces of equipment for the mining industry. And their sister company created cyclotrons for the nuclear medical community. So really interesting companies. From there, I moved into my current role at Garibaldi Glass. I have to say that working in manufacturing, like you said in the first presentation, is so cool. We make such cool things. We at Garibaldi have a recruitment hashtag called Leave Your Mark, with a symbol of a fingerprint. Of course, on glass, that's our worst enemy, but because that's exactly what you're doing with your career in manufacturing. No matter what role you're in, you're contributing to like a monumental project that beautifies the landscape. I get such a sense of pride when I go down to downtown Vancouver and see like a ton of our projects that my company has created, and that literally will be on our landscape for decades to come. So in kind of my essence, I've kind of eased into it and kind of hit the ground running. So it was very natural to me. Again, a lot of sponsorship from men and women in executive roles, just, helping me through it. So I'll talk a little bit more on that later though.
Melanie.
Yeah, I started my career in Ontario with M&M Food Marks as an accounts receivable clerk, and then I went into public accounting, and I just didn't like it. I do come also, my dad's an engineer, and he worked in a startup companies that were eventually gobbled up by McDonald Detweiler, and he made things. And as a little girl, I'd go visit him, and just I liked that he worked right beside the entrepreneur, the inventor, the innovator. And I've just always been attracted to people that are very entrepreneurial and very innovative. I think that as an accountant, as a CPA, you can be their voice of reason. You can moderate and kind of give both sides, and over time you establish trust with these business owners, and they respect your opinion. And it didn't really matter. I don't believe that I was a female. In some ways, sometimes I thought it was a benefit, to be honest, because I've always worked in such male dominated industries that sometimes it's like, oh, let's just have a different, the ego aside. And so I've had lots of mentors too.
Tengo,
Not
estoy
a
en una
woman.
sala de reuniones chiquita solo para mí, entonces aquí estoy con mi café, puse en el televisor la reunión y relajada.
Don't know where that's coming from, but yeah, so really it's the attraction, like everybody else is saying, to making something, to and even though we're talking about diversity, I was always very proud. I'm very proud of RIMEX because we have lots of age groups and cultures. We definitely, every time I go out to a social function or on the shop floor, we have increasingly more women, certainly not the representation that we need, but we're getting there. And we've always had a diverse environment and really tried to make sure that people are treated fairly. So yeah, that's about all I have to say.
Thanks, Melanie. Bill?
Well, I've been in manufacturing, give or take, for about 30 years. I wrote that on a piece of paper today and started the day off by making myself feel old when I wrote those words.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this for 30 plus years. I fell into the manufacturing side. I'm born and raised in the Fraser Valley and got my first job working for a primary forest products company, like lots of folks in British Columbia, and in sales. And actually, I did sales for the first 8 years of my career. And there was an opportunity to run some programs that involved not just selling things. It was taking a blank of wood and turning it into a bunch of different things. We made lots of choices, and instead of making one component, we made dozens of components. And I really liked that. I got really excited doing that. That was actually more fun than just doing the sales. And that led to an opportunity at Matrix where they were looking for people that had that view of manufacturing. And I got recruited or mentored, or however you want to look at it, stolen away. And I've had an opportunity to work in Matrix in big manufacturing plants and small. Started on the island in a very small manufacturing plant with equipment that would have been 50 or 60 years old, very hands-on. I think some of that equipment is circa what we saw in the video in the canning equipment, I think, when I started. And then had an opportunity to run what would be the state-of-the-art facilities that we have in the prairies that run volume of MDF, and a couple of facilities in between. And it always comes back to making something, right? That cool thing when you head out on the floor and you're starting with components. It's a bit like cooking, which I also enjoy, right? Where you're starting with all these raw ingredients, and in the end of it, you have created something else. And that is what gets me excited in the morning. What's interesting, though, is that all of the manufacturing folks to this day still hold against me that I'm a salesperson. They all still see me as a salesperson, and all the salespeople in my company see me as a manufacturing person. So I'm riding right down the middle of that. But it's a great career. I hadn't been able to convince a single. I have 3 children, and all 3 of them went in a completely different direction. So potentially I wasn't a good ambassador to my own family on manufacturing. So I'm going to try and do a better job of that outside of my small group.
Excellent. Lynn?
I had shared a little bit in my opening about my history. So I think that one of the things that is appealing to me is there is this perception that it's difficult for women to be in manufacturing, yet I have found my entire career when I have been to be incredibly welcoming. I think that it's one of the industries that is agnostic. It's about your integrity. It's about your ability to deliver, your ability to work with the team, to innovate. I think there's a spirit of camaraderie around building things and the pride of it and showcasing it. So that's where I'm drawn to being in this space. And then the other part is about contributing at the business level, that I have a Fortune 500 background, and then I equally have a $20 million manufacturing organization background. And being able to see where large practice thought leadership or methodologies can influence and translate to small and medium organizations, I find is incredibly compelling for a variety of reasons, because you're making things, so you can change and you can grow and you can take a different direction that isn't always the same in a corporate, type of environment. So there's a lot of opportunity and inclusivity. And I believe that at the same time, there's obviously a ton of work to do. But I started in manufacturing because I was doing an executive search for the CEO of the manufacturing company. And he basically said, I want you. And so I was like, oh, okay, great. And I didn't, I happened into it, I think, which a lot of people do. Grounded again in a very strong, construction labor background. So I just think there's a ton of possibility here and potential that is completely untapped. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I stay in this industry. It's always changing and it's tangible. We can, like you said, we can touch things and say, I made that, I contributed to that.
That's excellent to hear. Now, what challenges or obstacles did you face entering the manufacturing industry, and how did you overcome those obstacles? Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Remember that metal fabrication company I mentioned earlier? I was brought in as a part of a big change that they were making to their management team, and they were really trying to change the business. And that company, I have to say, was a huge departure from what I had experienced in my career previously. It was pretty rough, tough, very blue collar, unionized, not the most progressive when it came to creating an excellent employee experience. And that's super huge now that Rhonda had mentioned it as business culture earlier. And just as an example, on my first day, no one told me that I should bring solid footwear, as I'd be spending most of my day walking around a metal shop with uneven ground and metal shavings everywhere. So I dressed to impress on my first day in my high heels. And that small detail of just not even considering calling me and telling me what might be appropriate on my first day, it left me with a feeling of not feeling that I fit in. I wasn't welcome. It wasn't really a thought on their mind. Part of that obviously pushed me to make a lot of change in the organization in terms of the employee experience. So it was a very good learning experience, just having to go through it myself. It wasn't comfortable. I also had the fortunate experience to hire an amazing chief financial officer at the company. She had all the qualifications and then some. And then after 1 year, she quit. So on her way out, I had to find out why, because I was very close to her. I thought she was just so amazing, making great strides. And the reason she gave me is they don't listen because I'm a woman. That was her take on things. And that was definitely a turning point for me. I kind of felt like I was responsible for the employee experience. So how could I harness change if they really weren't willing to listen to a chartered accountant with an MBA and years of experience? So that was a huge obstacle for me that I had to work through. And for those who know me, I'm a very loyal and committed person. And I learned in that experience that some things you can't change, but you can change what you can control. So I chose to leave at that point when I knew that no matter what I did or said or the how much improvement I could make to that employee experience. If it wasn't bought in at the top of the company, it wasn't going to change anything. So that was a really difficult thing that I had to learn. Again, just an example of the challenges that some people might face.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I can relate to that from my younger years. I think I've overcome that. Yeah, I think probably a lot of women experience that as well. So I think, Bill, you have something.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not in a good position to tell a story about a woman's journey into manufacturing. However, I want to take this opportunity to sort of point everybody to the CME website and her stories. And there are 3 stories written by women that work for manufacturing, Matrix Manufacturing. Jill, who's a master production scheduler for our MDF group. Anita, who's a production operator. And then Majusha, who's a machine operator. I've read all the stories. They're, from my perspective, really good. Some really great insight on what their journeys have been like, and some advice that they are willing to share with the group. So well worth your time to go and look. I understand they're going to get posted in the next couple of hours. If you go now, you won't see it, but if you go in an hour, you might be one of the first with an opportunity to read.
Okay, great. So the great stories. Now, mentorship. Obviously, mentorship is critical for one's career advancement and learning opportunities. Who here had a mentor to champion and supported them through their journey? Bill?
I had a mentor, definitely the founder of the company that I work for now, Rimex. I mean, I was telling you guys earlier that, he was a single dad and I was a single mother. So he was older than me, but he understood that the challenges of raising a family on your own. And I think he could see in me that I was highly motivated to have a career and to support my family. And, and he really mentored me in the sense that I think as an accountant, sometimes it's all just numbers, right? And you're just producing things. And, I couldn't go into his office and put a piece of paper down, say a financial, like an income statement, without commentary. He wanted me to look at it from a business perspective, right? Like, look, what are those numbers telling you? Not just, oh, good job, you produced it, right? So, yeah, and then even earlier in my career, the CEO of the company, again, just sort of believed in me and did mentor me. And I think that what's really important is continuous education. You just have to just always be continuously learning. Because that it's really kind of the best way to evolve, right? Is to be with people at work and then to have external people, especially for women, learning about like conflict resolution and anger management and understanding that a lot of how our childhoods, our upbringings, our culture is how we are influenced in how we act in a business environment, and just to be aware of all that. So yeah, I've been fortunate. I've had a few good mentors. I wish one of them was a woman, but I've never even reported to a woman, actually, now that I think about it. So,
Melanie, I'd like to piggyback on that from the HR and employer perspective. Developing mentor programs in manufacturing is a distinguisher and a career advantage, and an attraction, a talent attraction. And the other part is that when I've been in these organizations, I've been surprised at how many men actually want to mentor women, and at all levels. And that goes also then to engagement, which goes to productivity, which goes to company success, and there's an ecosystem of it. And so that participation of mentorship, and then being, as I said, I have, and many other organizations have developed programs that are specific to career development, and whether someone wants to go all the way up the organization or simply wants to just continue to expand. And when you tie those mentor programs to the areas that I shared, we gain in, as I said, productivity, efficiency, et cetera. But more importantly, people are engaged and excited about their work, and that is a talent attraction and retention mechanism as well.
Yeah, when we talked earlier, I thought it was neat that somebody had mentioned, they would be flattered if somebody asked them to mentor them,
Right.
So I was thinking, yeah, wouldn't that be really cool if someone just came up to me and said, these are my career goals and would you work with me? I would be totally open to that. And it never really occurred to me that that's what should happen more, right?
Right.
I would say, everything that you two have already said is bang on and is very much the experience that I had. I've had different mentors through my entire career and still continue to have them today. And the most powerful thing that I've always got from them is the perspective that I don't have. It's never about, I shouldn't say it's never about, there's always an opportunity, you're doing something and somebody hey, there's a better way to do that. But the win is always, you're facing the wrong direction. You're missing what's really happening is over here, right? Whatever that is, whether it's a people issue, it's a production issue, it's the stuff that I miss. And I miss because I don't have that experience. I don't have that world experience. I haven't been around the globe as many times in this position as they have been. And I think that we talk a lot, for me, all of those mentorships were organic. I never once said to somebody, hey, I need you to mentor me. It just happened. And it happens because as leaders and men look at people that they're going to put time into, they feel comfortable with somebody that looks and acts and talks like them. So they're not excluding anybody, but they're just naturally going in this direction. And that puts women at a disadvantage. And I think some of the projects that Lynn is talking about, where we have to formalize that and level the playing field out to ensure we're driving inclusion in the business, is really, really important, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say quickly is don't be afraid to ask for a mentor. Don't be afraid, and not just at leadership or to go to HR or your manager. You could go to anyone that you value and has a subject matter expertise or experiences and ask them if they would. So don't hesitate to take a lead in your career in that way as well.
Right. Yes. Thank you all for that. I've actually been very lucky that I've also had a mentor here in Marilata. Like Melanie, I've never reported to a woman, so it has been our CEO who's been a great mentor. But no, it really does help. So attracting and retaining women in the workplace is and increasing diversity is a hot topic these days. For women in manufacturing, this really got impacted by the pandemic. And as Rhonda mentioned before, in February 2020, we had an all-time workforce high of 29.5% of women in manufacturing. This changed when the pandemic struck, and we have since dropped back down to the 28%, back to the same figures as 2018, prior to the hard work and dedication of many men and women in our industry of the past 2 years to increase that percentage. What initiatives has your organization done in attracting women and increasing diversity? Melanie?
Well, first of all, we put in proper change rooms and washrooms for women. That was a big one. We literally, got caught with our pants down on that one, started hiring women, and then realized, boy, we need to do some renovations. I think that, I think what we did particularly well at REMEX is we really defined our policies in relationship to horseplay, harassment, respectful workplace. We run an online program which does videos. You have to do quizzes. You have to acknowledge that you have attended these types of training. Our HR person runs in person for the lead hands, the supervisors, the managers. She does it almost on an annual basis. So we're always making sure that everybody in the organization from top to bottom understands what the definitions are for things like horseplay, joking around, appropriate behavior. Because I don't think that there should be ever an assumption that people just know how to act in a workplace versus the pub, right? Or in your house, or how you treat other people of different races or gender or sexual orientation. Like I strongly believe you can't assume that. So all of our employees go through these trainings. They need to do quizzes. These are the program that we have. It automatically says when your time frame has expired and you redo them. So I'm redoing them every year, right? Even though I've been in this business for 30 years, right? So I think we've done that. And then definitely high school job fairs. Job fairs is a really good way to meet people of all different diversity. And offering Red Seal, right? Red Seal programs, apprenticeship programs is attractive to everybody, but I think it helps with women because maybe you start on a grinder today, but you could be a welder, or you could be a machinist, right? So definitely our best lead hands and supervisors have come up through our organization, and try to get into the high schools, get into the job fairs.
There's a number of aspects that Melanie shared that, of course, again, I'm going to piggyback on, and because all of and the first one, I want to put a circle around all of that, which is to understand what a diversity strategy is with the leaders as well as the organization, to demonstrate to them the business value of doing so, that it's not just a politically correct thing, that you want to put a check in, that there's tons of data that diverse organizations outperform those that don't have diversity, and so on. So one of the first things that I do in working with my clients now, as well as when I was in-house, is to start with the business value of that. Then to be able to look at all of the ecosystem, whether from the first touch point, even with men and those that identify as men, when we're recruiting, to discuss our diversity strategy, ask them about people that they may know and organizations, et cetera. And then all the way through in terms of the attraction strategies, such as Melanie had said about going early in career, go to the high schools, go work with those particular groups and any other community groups. And then on onboarding, that we talk about what diversity, inclusion, and equity look like, and what they can expect and not expect. And I think that the earlier question about what was the biggest surprise to me was how it is a culture in manufacturing. And so there might be what they consider to be appropriate rough play and languaging that is completely not appropriate and or offensive to others, women, men, and others, right? And so it's about and I think this is the really key piece here, is ensuring diversity for one group while penalizing another is not diversity. So to be able to say to those, hey, what is it about that banter that's important to you, right? And it's about your ability to communicate, or your ability to connect, right? Because when I say a joke or whatever the case may be. So by being able to bring individuals into a diversity and inclusion program and say, in addition to everything Melanie said, hey, we're not trying to stop you from being you and having some fun conversation, but we want you to also enjoy the benefit of your coworkers. And so, we worked with them on what, and we actually had agreements. We had team agreements on what would be considered comfortable horseplay from all diverse groups and what was completely, not acceptable. And then moving it through in terms of the learning strategy. Also building women in welding, women in programs, high-performing women, mentoring and coaching, and all of these touch points together. My experience over the last, and I'm with Bill, although I've got 35, so I feel older, is that it really is about communicating so that everyone understands what it is. I think the absence is, it's this big thing out there. And I was thrilled to hear that you called this the HR person, because I'm so tired of hearing the HR lady, because we seem like we're the rule people, and people view diversity and inclusion like that too. Yep, we have to do it. And so really having programs to break that down and not make people wrong, but bringing them in to be like, you know what, of course you're going to feel that way because you've been able to do that your whole life and no one has ever said that to you. That doesn't make you wrong or bad. It simply just makes for you to be like, hey, the reason you do that is because you want to connect with other people. So how about if we look at it, kind of this way? Oh, and by the way, don't do these 5 things, along the way. So those are some of the ways that we have been extremely successful with the clients I've worked for. And then when I was in-house as well, is really modeling inclusion. And I'll just quickly say about, because we spend a lot of time on diversity, but inclusion is around, if someone's disabled, if somebody cannot do certain things, are we making sure that we're including them so that their voice is heard as well? And so the inclusion part's equally as important.
That's great. Bill, did you have any?
Well, I was quickly going through my list, crossing off everything that everybody else had already covered, which was a big portion of my list. Lynn's comment, though, at the beginning of you have to have a strategy, you have to know where you're going, is the most important part, right? Otherwise, I think you're going to spend your time spinning your wheels and not sure whether you're actually moving forward or not. I mean, we've broken it into two things. One, how do we bring more women into our business? And we've got, we've decided to go out and do some direct sourcing with some agencies and pay a premium to find a female candidate for the roles, which we have been somewhat successful with. In supporting women in the business, we have the Women's ERG, which is the Employee Resource Group. Approximately 50%, and I didn't know this stat till I saw it this morning, 50% of all of the female Matrix employees are members of this group. It's done today mostly virtually, obviously because of COVID, but there is an opportunity that we will do some of this in person as we go forward. This is meant to drive engagement, retention. This gives them an opportunity for their voices to be heard in the company and our policies, and what will improve their experience. We do an engagement survey across the company, and one of the things that we have agreed to do this time is because we can sort engagement scores out by male and female, and take that information on females and get a female cohort together to go, hey, what does this mean, and how do we use this data to, again, improve that inclusion and the retention of folks inside of our business. PPE came up. And it's one of those things that's right in that same bucket as the bathroom. If there's not a bathroom that's appropriate for women, that is going to make it awfully difficult for them to work for you. But we have PPE, and quite often we have gloves, right? And we have small, medium, and large. And it took us a long time. I think we had to ask a question. The small actually isn't small enough for a lot of the ladies to have a good, well-fitting glove that they can do their job at. And do the earplugs actually fit and stay in? And the glasses, are they appropriate for folks? Are we making their job easier or harder as we go forward? And those things are important for a company like ourselves to get right as we go forward.
That's a great insight and advice. Thank you so much for that. So throughout your journey, what steps did you take, or perhaps goals you set for yourself and did you leverage any resources or tools to assist you?
Yeah, so when I joined manufacturing, I have this natural curiosity that I have to know more than on my job, know more about the company. I need to know about the industry. And I was very curious about best practices, technology, education. And that's kind of when I discovered the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Association. And they have these things called peer council groups, and they were just starting up when I joined. And by the way, first of all, the association itself is excellent and a source of many valuable resources and tools. But these peer council groups, for me, were truly helpful. It's basically a group of 8 to 10 people that meet to exchange information, best practices, ideas, insights. They're facilitated meetings that are very interactive and offer a lot of solution-seeking discussions. I think right now they have peer councils for HR, supply chain, safety, sales and marketing, operations management, and executive management. And I know I sound like an infomercial, but I can't promote them enough. So for you starting out in your career, this is a great way just to meet new people, expand your knowledge of the industry, and of course your network. So I found it very, very useful, and I've probably been with, I've known these members for going on, I won't say 10 years now, maybe. So very good connections that last beyond just the workplace. So I highly recommend them.
I would say that in terms of steps, to a couple of things that have been guiding principles for me throughout my career, and they're certainly relevant to manufacturing as well, and in some cases specific. Say yes to opportunities, to be able to observe, say yes to opportunities to participate. Certainly, I'm not asking you to overload yourself, and a full job is a full job to begin with. But if you have exposure to other areas, people will know you, and people do business with people that they know. And so, and especially if there's an absence in the organization of a formal career planning or career mapping progression role. So say yes. Also, know when to say no, right? To be able to say, I appreciate that. Here's where I'm at. That wouldn't be something I could participate at this time, but I would love to do it at another time. I think especially for women, and I think this is a confidence thing, we believe or have been conditioned to say yes, to be the caregiver, to be the scriber, to be the person who does those things. And then if we don't do them, we believe that we're not kind or being collaborative or being a team player. And those are not true. Those are all legacy narratives. And so I think it's very important to know both of those pieces. To the other career pieces, especially in manufacturing, is to be reliable, to be credible, and be willing to learn. And to say when you don't know something, and then ask about it. And I would end with that piece being ask questions, always ask questions. Why was this designed this way? Why is it being manufactured that way? I cannot tell you, I started out as a secretary back in the day and worked my way up to executive. And I say that because there have been many times at the beginning of my career where I thought, well, they're the leaders, they must know. Of course, I'm not going to say anything. But the reality was that they didn't. But I felt nervous, or I was at a different level. And so I didn't necessarily do that until later in my career. So be willing to speak up, and you can be respectful and say, I have an observation. Have you considered? And have that courage to be willing to do that, and don't assume that everybody knows everything, because again, we all don't, and we need to do this together. And I think specifically about manufacturing, I find it to be one of the main industries where you can move up quickly based on experience and capability. If you prove that you're really good at one thing, you will quickly become the foreman, right? And you may or may not want to, but that's a different conversation, right? But so, be open, be willing, say yes, say no, ask questions, and have courage. Have the courage to be okay with being afraid to do it, but do it anyway.
Great. Thank you. And I'm going to plug in for the CME Peer Council as well. I have been part of both HR and finance group. Unfortunately, we don't have a finance peer council right now, but we actually still, Melanie was part of that too. And we actually still reach out to each other when we have certain questions. So it's a great resource for sure. So, okay, well, let's open the floor to the audience for questions. Tracy, I think you've received some questions you're going to ask.
Yeah. Yes, I have. It's great to see how the chat there's lots of great positive comments, and I have had some questions. And my first question is from Chaitra, who is also one of our working group members. And her question is for the group is, how do you get more non-women groups to be allies to help advocate women in manufacturing?
Excellent question. First of all, thank you for acknowledging that while we are focused on women in manufacturing, that this is not, just like Wanda said, jobs are not genders, right? And so this is agnostic. So I think that's the first place to start, is to go to non-women groups, formally and informally, to talk about the business issues. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough, we don't have enough talent. We don't have enough labor. We don't have enough process, or whatever the business part is. We want to lead the market. We want to be the #1 product offering. So lead with the business and be able to demonstrate, hey, we have an opportunity to nail our goals by including more women, and then have at your ready, and there's a ton of information. One I can certainly share, and there's a ton of information online about the ROI, the return of investment in women in manufacturing. So, you know, if I went to any CEO or non-woman group and said, if I told you you could make 20% more profitability, would you do it? And yeah, they would say, I'm like, great, I have the answer for you. So come from the business perspective and include and just talk about it. And don't worry about the level. Like often we think we have to go to leadership. And I'm again, not encouraging you to break protocol or whatever is your culture, but I'm asking you to not be afraid to be a leader, right? To reach out to a non-woman group or person to say, hey, I have an idea. Would you be willing to come talk? Or would you be willing to partner with us? Would you be willing to have a lunch and learn with these 20 women and invite other men as well? Because it is not, we are not going to solve for this alone. And by doing so, we actually separate ourselves out further.
Great response. Thank you, Lynn. So true. I see some more of you nodding. Did anyone want to add anything further?
Oh, I was just going to say that, you know, sometimes people aren't aware of their unconscious bias, and you know, there's some great courses. The Justice Institute highly recommend their courses on, and you know, right from the top to your supervisors, to your lead hands, like, you know, people are mortified when they're told that, you know, there's, you know, with racism and sexism, and people are mortified to think that that's what, but everybody has these biases, right? So I think education in that, for me personally, really helped me understand, yeah, that when you're white, for instance, you have white privilege, right? And when you're a man, you have male privilege. And so, yeah, I would just, you know, when you get your leadership groups together, look at some continuous education for them as a group.
Yeah, I think over this past year too, and in so many different aspects of our culture, there's been a lot of learning, and I think we have a long way to go, and none of us know it all, and we're constantly can learn. So looking for other resources and tools out there to help us along the way. And just mentioning the Justice Institute, I didn't know they had something like that. So that's definitely another place for people to find resources. I also just want to take a moment to remind everyone that KPMG, who Lynn works for, helped create in partnership with the CME, I should say, helped create the diversity and inclusion toolkit that we keep referring to and that we keep reminding you that you can get for free on the CME website. So I just wanted to highlight that, that piece as well. Okay, I have another question. And this kind of, again, ties in really nicely to what we've experienced over the last couple years. How has your workforce or workforce planning been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? Who would like to take that one first?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
So, I mean, you know, our manufacturing plants are assembly lines for most, probably the best way to describe them, right? So it doesn't work very well to have people show up at indiscriminate times throughout the shifts, right? We need folks we can't pile up moldings for 4 or 5 hours where we're waiting for the next person to do the step. But it has driven us to come up with more flexible shifts, more flexible hours for the team members, and particularly to create an opportunity. What we had to do early on in COVID is we actually gave every hourly employee an extra 40 hours of, I can't even remember, I think we called it temporary paid time off. It wasn't, hey, this is now the new normal, but in this environment, everybody has an extra 40 hours. You got to take your kid to get a test. You've got to do, you know, you have no daycare, right? Daycare was supposed to happen and it didn't. Or, hey, we're going to need to adjust your long-term shifting because daycare is now new. Like you can't do a 6 o'clock drop off, just to ensure that we had staff to run all the way through the pandemic. And actually we were able to. We didn't have to cancel a single shift. We didn't lose any specific downtime, which we were very fearful of happening by creating that. And we actually made that 40 hours pretty easy to get at. Like there was no doctor's note required or whatnot. And we trusted that our folks would use it appropriately. And I would say probably 95% of the time that trust was well placed.
Fantastic. I think we've talked about in kind of preparation, we talked a little bit about how important I'm just going to refer to my notes here. The parental leave. And I know that Rhonda mentioned this in her keynote as well, how important it is that we look at some new parental leaves and different childcare options. As you just said, Bill, that's what your company had to do because there was people, we were in a position we'd never been in before. Melanie, did you want to kind of add to that with regards to the parental leave? Did you have anything else further?
The only thing I was thinking is that, you know, culturally, and I think we've come a long way, but culturally, we should also be encouraging fathers to take equal responsibility when a child's sick or needs to go to the dentist or the dog, you know, is throwing up, needs to go to the vet, whatever it is, you know, just really encourage it so that, you know, and that men aren't feeling that, you know, it's career limiting or that they're, you know, their boss is rolling their eyes in their office or, you know, I mean, that's what I find, you know, even today is somewhat unfair is that I really see the burden on women still. Yeah, I don't understand why we're still at that place, quite frankly, but I think companies can help that way and just encourage, you know, when there's maternity leave, parental leave, that the male takes some of it. In fact, I've read articles where, you know, it says that, you know, if a woman gets pregnant and then she takes off, you know, 12 months, 18 months, you know, that's almost 3 years. And the male hasn't had much to do with it because you're not involved, you're not pregnant, you're not nursing, you're not doing the leave. And then all of a sudden, we as women expect men to all of a sudden pick up after 3 years, you know, so this article was about just encouraging men to take off some parental time. To equally contribute to the parenting experience.
Well, the first thing we have to do is women is stop saying to our partners, would you help me with the kids? Because that implies that it's my job and you're helping. So that's the first thing, but that's a whole nother seminar. And then the other part that we have done, both working at KPMG, we have worked with organizations on exactly this, is around the understanding that this is different. So we have a set of programs and policies that we've been going through in our normal state. And so you can't overlay that, right? Well, this is our absentee policy or this is our attendance policy. Right, that's what it was before March 1st of 2020. And so how can we keep the integrity of the program? And by that, I mean, attendance policies are there because it's about productivity, right? And our ability to count on the shift and your ability to drive everything that's happening. So we have to do that, but can we look at it differently? Can we look at the policy short term? Can we work with groups specifically? Can we ensure that this is a team environment? Because a lot of times, and I think, again, manufacturing, construction, these types of environments are very, well, I'm doing this and he or she isn't doing that, right? It's a very measured because you are, like, you have to create a widget in the same amount of time. So getting past that, moving through behavioral change management to be able to say, we are in a unique time and all boats rise with the high tide. So yes, there might be employees that are in a different flexible program than you are because their needs are different, but then address that and address what equity looks like, because otherwise people, they just start counting and measuring. Well, I don't have children, so why do I have to work 50 hours? But you have children and you've been given an accommodation because we're in the middle of COVID. That's real. That's very real to people. And so it's about addressing, what does that mean? You're right, that is not equitable. What does equity look like to you? Can I give you, Stu Smith, some flexible opportunities? Can I give you an additional day off? You know, are there things that we can do to curate around the organization that is unique without giving away the integrity of the program? We're not saying everybody can be out and have a, you know, willy-nilly attendance program, but that's important, is to be able to be flexible with and understand what you're driving. And I think first, the one thing I think COVID did is demonstrate to us that we can change on a dime, that we can do things differently and that we should always challenge ourselves. Many of my quotes are from America because I'm American. John F. Kennedy said, everyone can make a difference and everyone should try. And so that to me is the same thing about COVID, right? We really are in this together. And so looking at your programs, your policies, and what you're doing, and just ripping it up, just open it up to be able to say, what actually can we do right now? And I think that's the biggest hurdle that I think that we faced. However, it works when we do it that way.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lynn. Wow, so much great information shared. I just want to make sure I give a chance. We do have a couple more minutes here. I just want to make sure I give a chance to each of you. It looks like we don't have any further questions from the audience. Maybe a minute or two each. Is there anything that we didn't have a chance to cover off today that you want to make sure gets shared with our participants, be it your social media or different resources and tools that you just didn't have a chance to talk about that you want to make sure gets out to the larger group? Maybe I'll start with Bill. Is there anything further that you'd like to add about yourself, Matree, mentorship, something we didn't cover off?
You know what? I think I got my fair share of the oxygen of the last 45 minutes. So I'm looking through my notes here and I don't think I missed anything. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to make sure that I hadn't. Awesome.
And don't fear, Bill. I only came into manufacturing about 5 years ago. So there's still hope for your kids out there. They might make their way over to manufacturing at some other point. Next, Sarah, is there anything you can share with us about Garibaldi Glass or yourself that maybe we didn't have a chance to touch on during the panel?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. So Garibaldi, we actually have a higher percentage of women in management and leadership positions than I've experienced in other workforces. Our challenge is with our production workforce. So we have women's washrooms. We have all those things that cater to the employee experience, but our true challenge is reaching out to that labor force. So I've learned a lot from this panel today that I'll be taking back and working on. So I do want to just make sure I thank everyone. But I also want to reach out to those employers who might be feeling that they're too small and the diversity toolkit and all these resources are overwhelming. If you're feeling that way, my recommendation to you is you don't have to have all the answers, but you have to start asking the right questions. Once you do that, then you will have like a lot of people providing you with their input, solutions, advice. So, and that can be done within your organization and not at the management level, like we all said, like from the ground floor. It doesn't take much to talk to your current workforce and say, hey, we feel really underrepresented in this area. What do you think? How could we make that change? It's not hard. It just takes time and effort and focus. So I really learned a lot today, so I say thank you to everyone too.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Melanie, is there anything you can tell us about RIMEX?
Yeah, we're always looking. I mean, we had a very, like probably most of you, very stable workforce through the pandemic. We fortunately kept working. In fact, we had a pretty good year, all things considering. But now after 18 months, people are looking at other opportunities, right? So there are also opportunities at RIMEX. So please check our website out if you're looking for work. And just the only advice I'd give women really is it's good to have a goal and to have and look at your career in the long game. Don't get too frustrated by the short game. It's 40 plus years, and have a goal and communicate your goal to anyone that'll listen in the company. And like someone mentioned before, be curious, right? So if you're at the coffee station and you're with the head of engineering and you don't know something about the product, ask. People love to talk about what they do. And it raises your profile in the company. So, just be open. Don't be afraid to say what you want and where you want to be. Even if you want to be the CEO, tell the CEO you want to be the CEO one day, right? If they're worth their salt, they're gonna think, great, I need succession, right? We need this company. I want this company to go be around for another 100 years. So, yeah, that's my advice.
That's great advice and so true. I remember doing an interview once and the person interviewing me says, well, what would you like to do in the future? And I just said, well, I want your job. And he was the manager and he got a kick out of it. And to be honest, to this day, whenever I talk to him, he says, I still can't believe you said that in an interview. No one's ever said that. So you know what? It's that confidence to just, you know, and share that thought with people. I think it's a good thing. Just to wrap up, I'll pass it off to Lynn. Lynn.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Tracy, and your team and everyone on this call, because this has been so rich and rewarding. And when Tracy shared with us that we could speak at the end, I was like, oh, right, we have work that we're here, but because we're just so genuinely interested in wanting to raise this boat. So I would, of course, echo everything everybody says. And I would say two things. First of all, one of my favorite riddles is, what is always coming but never gets here? The future. So there is no tomorrow. Don't wait to, as Melanie said, for someone else to step in and ask about your career. Take charge and be bold and reach out. You'd be surprised how many organizations are willing to help, how many people are helping, and we certainly are all here to help as well. Tracy, I had a similar experience where at the end of a very difficult day of interviewing, the COO asked me, was there anything else you can tell me? And I said, you can tell me how I could get this job. And he did tell me that that's, of course, the lynch, I was qualified, but he was like, you were so willing. So you would be surprised. And I'm hopeful that you hear that theme throughout this, is what we're all saying is, you don't need permission. You really don't. Act accordingly, work within your policies and guidelines. And I would say in terms of where I can help, I absolutely, and KPMG can be a large part of working with you on your talent strategies, your diversity and equity strategies, your organizational design. How is information moving, right? Someone on the assembly line isn't going to be the same person who's in a different role, but I'm not talking about that. It's like, how can you move, how can you look at your way decisions are made, et cetera. So certainly feel free to reach out to me there. And I'll end with, I don't know her name, but there's a woman who just won the Emmy for the show, The Amazing Mrs. Maisel, I believe it is. And she quoted her grandmother. And her grandmother was in Auschwitz and they were ready to be killed. And she said to the person, what happens to me if I step out of line? And the officer said, I will not have the heart to shoot you, but somebody else will. Her grandmother stepped out of line and they are here today. And so what she said at the end was, step out of line, ladies, step out of line. We're not going to get there if we don't be bold. So be wonderful, be beautiful, be kind, be compassionate, but step out of that line.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. We have so many Twitter or hashtag. We can be hashtagging all these things. Step out of line. Jobs don't have genders. Like, this is perfect. Thank you, Lynn, to end it off on such great energy as well. I know this has been a long session for many of our participants. So first of all, thank you to our panel for your generosity and your time and being so willing to share your stories with us. So thank you very much for that. I also want to thank our participants. I know you're probably listening to this and just as excited as I am, because the information shared are things that are going to be, we can take back to our companies and drive change. You also might be thinking, I wish so-and-so was listening to this presentation today. I really think that they would find this beneficial. Well, don't fear, today's session is recorded. We always tell you that at the end, but today's session will be recorded and we will be able to house it for you on the CME website so that you can rewatch if you're looking to review the information again and you didn't quite have a chance to take all the notes that you wanted to, or if you would like to have your different staff or friends or family you think would benefit from this, you can have them watch it at a later date. Just in closing, the goal of today's session was to introduce individuals and companies that are driving change, to make the manufacturing industry in BC more inclusive and increase the representation of women. Secondly, we wanted to highlight that women are an untapped resource and leaders need to intentionally, and Bill mentioned this in the panel, we need to intentionally focus on women to strengthen and grow our sector. Leaders need to become champions and encourage and support women to not just pursue careers in manufacturing, but to create safe workplaces to retain them. And finally, we need to remove barriers to help women achieve success and grow within our sector. We've talked to the nth degree, I think, today about the free tools and resources that are available to your company. And the diversity and inclusion toolkit's just one of them, which contains the Leader Guidebook for Men and 10 steps to create an inclusive workplace and so much more. You can also read the inspirational stories through the Her Stories project, which was mentioned many times throughout today's session. And in the words of our keynote speaker, Rhonda Barnett, if you can see me, you can be me. So lastly, I wanted to let you know that we've shared knowledge, provided tools and support to assist both your companies and individuals to attract, retain, empower, and support women in BC manufacturing. It's events like this Women in Manufacturing Success Forum that's just one way to bring 100,000 women to manufacturing by 2025. And I know we can do it. You know, I can't wait to look back in 2, 5, 10 years from now and see how far we've come. So with that, I want to say we look forward to your participation on Thursday's education event. You can still register online now, and it is also free. Otherwise, I thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for what the Women in Manufacturing in BC do next. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.